think we'll be out of here by 9. CISD School Board of Trustees. It is April 1st, 2024. It is 6 o'clock at San Marcos High School. We're going to move right into public forum. I've received no requests to speak, and so we'll start off with the agenda prep for the regular April 15th meeting. Dr. Superintendent.
All right, Madam President, members of the board, good evening and welcome to tonight's special meeting. So we will again, under Superintendent's Report, Item 5, we will have some student recognitions. And then we will also be recognizing our teacher residents from our elementaries and our high schools and their cooperating teachers next month. So should be fun. We have residents at the high school and 3 of our elementaries. We're the only district in the state that actually has year-long teacher residents at the high school level, which is unheard of. I think that's because of the good partnership we have with Texas State and them changing the way they certify their teachers to help us get them into the building sooner. So we want to recognize them and the great work that the Texas State professors are doing to help us build that program. Item 6, reports and information items. Item A, Board of Trustees, we have our number 1 annual report on trustee continuing education hours from May 23 to present as required by board policy and TASB. And then we will just provide a board legal expenses update. We've been doing that in the past where we show that to y'all so you can have it for your benefit if you'd like to peruse that information. Item 6B, academics, we'll have our quarterly assessment update, number 3, which is both math and literacy. We should be good to go on that. That is also testing week, April 15th, so the next day we start testing, so go on whatever your choice is, light candles, say a prayer, whatever it is, you know, wish kids have a good night's sleep, any positive thoughts we want. Item B, 2, strategic planning update. Dr. Sanders will provide a strategic plan update on where we're at. Item B3, Mr. Nevades, I'm assuming, will provide the science materials adoption update, kind of walk you through how we've involved the teachers in the different products and where we're at. Item C1, operations update. Mr. Sandoval will provide an overview on the 2023 bond progress. Item 7, approval of consent agenda items. It's a couple of things. Item A, approval of minutes for regular scheduled board meeting on March 18, 2024, and special board meeting on April 1st, 2024. Item B, consider approval of awarded contracts for RFP JN 2023-04 for mowing services. Mr. Doyle will have that information. We started this a few years back. Y'all had asked us to look at our contracts. So this is one that's coming up. And then item C, consider approval of awarded contracts for RFP JN 2023-06 garbage collection, recycling, and composting services. And that again will be Mr. Doyle.
Dr. Cardona, will we be getting sort of a look back on those contracts when he talks about them? Just helpful.
As to who we have now and who we're proposing.
Right, and
comparison.
if there's changes, financial impact of the changes.
I can provide that information, but what will be submitted is the rank on who submitted.
Okay.
So there is a possibility whatever vendor we're using right now for those services may not submit. So we rank on best value, right? So we'll bring forth the rank of the vendor who provides the best value.
Okay.
I guess we could put on that front page sheet like who is currently awarded, and then
Who's the new award?
and then potentially if it's a change, who the
Right, but
change
it's the
is.
RFP process, so y'all have ranked them based on best value.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Item 7D, consider approval of the annual ratification of the TEKS, the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills.
Is that a requirement by Texas that we ratify their TEKS?
The ones they tell us to teach?
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, that's cool.
So we're voluntold to.
That's
yes,
cool,
yeah.
thanks.
Local control.
Yes, here they are, now approve them.
I'll do it.
Item 8, items for action 8A, academics, consideration and possible action on the adoption of those science materials that we're going to present earlier. Item 8B, procurement, consideration and possible action on the ranking of the proposals in response to the school district's request for proposals for construction manager at-risk services for the SMCISD 2023 bond projects identified as Middle School Renovations Project, San Marcos High School Additions and Renovations Project, and 3, the Natatorium Project. Ooh, that's a mouthful. Item 9, closed section is authorized by section 551.074 of the Texas Education Code. We'll have a closed session discussion. A, discussion on administrator contract renewals and extensions. Item 9B, discuss teacher and other professional personnel contract renewals. Item 9C, consultation with legal counsel regarding personnel matters.
And right now, just with our timeline, we may or may not have one personnel to present to you all. We have given a deadline to get a resignation, and if not, then we'll be preparing that file to present to you all.
Item 9D, deliberation regarding safety and security, including safety personnel systems and tutor audit reports, infrastructure, and/or devices.
And right now, we don't have anything to report, so the next 2 weeks or to the next board meeting, we may not need that discussion.
I know I talked to Mr. Cleveland about the school marshal at Bonham, and we have a plan until the end of the year. We did not have a lot of candidates after the person ghosted us, I guess, so to speak, that we offered the job to. And so we're just going to wait till May till we get a better pool of candidates. Since the next summer training is July, I think, the next Texas A&M training for marshals is in July. And then item 10, the board will reconvene from closed session to take action on items discussed in closed session. A, consideration and possible approval of administrator contract renewals and extensions. B, consideration and possible approval of teacher and other professional personnel contract renewals. And 10C, consideration and possible action regarding personnel matters. Madam President, that is all I have.
Thank you. When the board did its recent self-evaluation process, it came up with our consultants that something helpful for us to do would be to regularly at every meeting review particular local policies, mostly with the idea of making sure that the board is up to date on what our local policies say, and because we have so many of them and they vary so widely that doing it habitually, like 1 or 2 policies every meeting, was recommended. So I'd like to add that starting this month as a recurring item, and I wanted to first open it up to my colleagues and see if there were any particular policies that y'all would be interested in reviewing. The idea would be that we would all review it, study it, come with any questions. There might be a case where something would come up where we would propose an amendment to the policy or ask the staff to go and look at particular issues around it, but it's mostly an item for us to, for edification for the board, so.
For the local
The local policies
Yeah.
that we can affect. The state policies, obviously, we can affect, but the process of affecting them is much more difficult and cumbersome and less immediate, and so I think we should start with at least the local policies, just unless somebody disagrees with that idea, so.
So I'm not familiar enough with our local nomenclature and how many there are in it, but I would recommend that we start with those things that impact students incredibly directly, which would be like disciplinary actions and those sorts of policies that would result in a major decision that would impact students and families. I don't know, I need to, I'm not that familiar with it, but breaking it down based on that might be where I would suggest we start. And I know there are a lot of policies there.
Changes that would affect them when they start school, like zigzag dress code, GPA.
Sort of, yeah, those
Code
things.
of conduct.
Yeah, the kind of,
This board wants to start going down the rabbit hole of looking
no.
at student code of conduct issues? Or
no, I just think that we need to understand what our policies are in response to student code of conduct issues. That would be my
The
That would be
suggestion
my
was that
request.
many of the policies might not have been updated relatively recently, and we might not really be familiar with what they say. And because policymaking is one of the responsibilities of the board, that we should routinely review it and discuss it with staff and determine whether or not this is appropriate as stands, make sure that we all understand why it is, and if we have reasons why it maybe should change, to study those and then make those changes. That was my understanding of the
Absolutely.
recommendation.
And that a lot of them would not be changed. It would be more about understanding.
Right.
The number one that I can think of is the high school policy.
Across the board, we're,
Correct.
I
That's
think,
a thing.
I think we're open to suggestions also. Is
Yeah.
I think what.
I think we're looking at our local grading policy, not just with high school and some issues potentially, but I think across the board, we need to have a discussion about where the board wants us to go.
So let's do that. So let's look in and figure out with the two policies. I think 2 is probably all we can handle per meeting. It seems that's
Yeah,
ambitious
grading,
enough.
so-
So let's look at the grading policy, and then let's look at the code of conduct that pertains to disciplinary actions, broadly speaking. Make sense? And certainly within that, that would be provided to the board in advance in the board book so that we can all review it. And also if they're, as administration and cabinet are looking at those policies, and if there's a recommendation coming from administration, we are certainly open to any recommendation from administration on things that might need to be changed.
Oh, we know we're gonna do this?
We're gonna
next
start
meeting?
in April and do it, well, we are going to aim to do this at every meeting, to review 2 policies per meeting.
Just trying to figure out, I'd probably put it under item 8, items, discussion and
I
possible
think
action.
Grading's not ready yet? Okay, then let's
Okay.
just do code of conduct for this month, because this is something new that we're all trying, right? And that's a big enough one, I think, probably, and we'll wait until grading, you guys have more of your ideas on what you want to see with that. But why don't we all just agree, then we'll review the code of conduct, disciplinary, whichever policy we decide is the one that's most pertinent to that, and start there.
So, since we're adding more to the meetings that we haven't in the past, can we also look at a policy that would give us more efficiency? That was one of the other things that he talked about, was have policies that guide the behavior of the board members also, so that you can end, reporting and stuff like that. So maybe not in April, but maybe in May, we could put on the agenda something about looking at, presentations. How long our presentation is going to be, Sometimes we get a 30-minute presentation, give the folks that have to give these presentations an idea of what our expectations are, so that, they're not building a 30-minute presentation and we only really wanted a 5-minute
Yeah.
presentation type of thing.
I think we should do that as part of our standard operation review, or proceed, because I think that should be put into the board's standard of operating. So we could look to do that in May, and at the same time, I was thinking that because it's around May, June, that we start to calendarize for the next year. We schedule the board meetings, and one of the other recommendations at the time was that we schedule recurring things throughout the year. So in the way that we looked at the math scores this year in January, we looked at the college and career readiness at a particular time, that we put those on a calendar a year ahead so that they're predictable, both for the benefit of the cabinet and the board members, but also for the public and for teachers and everybody in general. So I think trying to approach both of those things at the same time, but look at it as a work in progress that we're going to try to, make a lot of headway on over the course of the summer and into the fall would be sort of my thinking on it.
Do we need to approve the self-assessment in the April board meeting? And I don't think we did that already. We've never done a self-assessment before, but we do approve the assessment that we did of the superintendent, but I don't know that it's necessary. So this is really just an open question.
I think because it's optional, there's no requirement. If there's nothing legally binding about it, it's a voluntary and
Perfectly fine.
optional.
Yeah,
I think we could as a sort of, but it seems kind of performative.
sounds great. Just
I don't
wanted
think it's
to throw it
necessary.
out there because we've never done it before.
Okay, so with that, anything else that anybody would like to add to the agenda or?
Well, I think we all received an email today that I would, or earlier this week maybe that I would like to discuss. Referring to a comprehensive needs assessment suggestion. Is that something that we can talk about?
So I think that that was an unsolicited email.
I don't know what y'all are talking about.
You got it.
Did I?
Yeah.
Maybe I just-
Understood.
Okay. Sure. I mean, we can add that to the
I'm
agenda.
just,
Who's it from?
it is from a faculty member at Texas State University. I think
Guadarrama?
that's true.
Okay.
Being an unsolicited email is absolutely valid
Yeah.
and true. It doesn't discount what
Oh,
was
the one from
provided.
last Thursday.
Was it from last Thursday? Okay. Well, that tells you when Dr. Salmi checked her agenda.
I have met with her for coffee, and what she does is she studies our reports. And then, because she's a professor of bilingual education, or ESL, she feels like she has some suggestions for us. And so that's,
And we have a director in this regard, like we have someone who's involved in this regard. So is it because it was an unsolicited and external recommendation that we should consider it? I mean, I feel like we think we shouldn't necessarily consider the recommendations.
I didn't think that we shouldn't consider that. I just was, it's been a busy couple of weeks and I was waiting for the superintendent to weigh in, and I haven't had a chance to check with him yet, so.
No worries.
Yeah, 'cause it seems to me that that should go,
the way she
Through.
goes.
Absolutely.
Right.
you know, I don't know that we
Agreed.
should be involved in that besides saying, hey, superintendent, can
Sure.
you check
I
that out?
haven't even shared it with, I haven't even shared it with.
How about we
Dr.
start with the superintendent and the cabinet reviewing that, and then
I'll share it
we
with
can
There you
discuss it
go.
I think that's
at this
fantastic.
meeting next month and decide if it needs to be something that we
I
put on the
like that.
agenda for presentation, for review, for recommendations.
And even if it's just putting in contact the person that we've employed to do these things, right? We have someone in charge of these
Right.
things. And so, I mean, that's another course of action that's perfectly acceptable.
That was my suggestion to her when she initially approached me, because she took that taper report and summarized it in 3 or 4 pages,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was a big job.
Right.
Something is about that thick.
Mm-hmm.
But my suggestion to her was, had she met with anybody from the cabinet?
No, she hasn't met.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's
They
start
took
with,
a
She's,
That tells
I know.
We'll put her with Monica Valdez.
That seemed like the right person.
Monica,
Let's start
Monica
there.
and her should visit.
I was like her, I lost my mind.
Sounds good.
all right, anything else? Great. If not, then we will move into our budget workshop. Mr. Doyle, take it away.
All right, good evening, board. Most of this presentation is a repeat of last budget workshop, but we did want to bring forth some options to the board as in terms of cost-saving opportunities. And also, when we get to that portion of the presentation, open the floor for discussion. Opening up and gathering ideas, feedback from the board, and maybe some of the guidance and ideas where you see our budget going. I'd like to start off our presentations with our goal in mind by fiscal year 2025, by June of 25, we're adopting that deficit budget at or below $5 million. So again, tonight we'll look at revenue projections, salary scenario, look at any of those cost savings opportunities, and then just a reminder of where we're at in the timeline. Being that it's April 1st, June will be here really quickly, and we have some major decisions to make between then. So it really has not changed. The ADA information that I have to put into our revenue projections, I cannot get a figure much over 84 million closing out current year, and then even looking into 24-25. We're probably going to have that budgets based on anywhere between 84 and 84.2, maybe 84.3 million. So that's the reality, right, of where we sit. So this goes back to a zero plan, and if the scenario is we were to bring back all the salaries, we just move everybody into next fiscal year, right?
We are looking at somewhere a salary cost approximately $78.3 million. We've looked at it in a few ways. Again, that number is close to that 78.2, 78.4, but really you're at 78.3-ish in salary cost. Maintenance and operation, again, that's just to continue providing services for our students, is you're looking at $17.3 million. That central office line item, as you can see there, is 3.9. That gives us an overall projected budget of $99.6 million. So again, working off the theory that we have $84 million in revenue. If we took that $99.6 million deficit, you can see, or budget, excuse me, expenditure total, that does lead us to a deficit budget of $15.6 million. It is closing down from that $26 million that we passed previous year, but again, our goal, and personally, I don't want to be up here bringing you a double-digit deficit number, so we're trying to bring that down. But also looking at into the future, right? We know a few things. We know that public ed and funding is under attack from different avenues, right? So we got to be thinking not just next year, but many years down the road where we're at with our fund balance and being sure that we have operational funds. Looking at, if you play this scenario out, your estimated fund balance ending in June 24 would be $47.2 million. But then if you continue to operate as such, you can see that by June of 25, that fund balance drops down to $31.6 million. So that's a significant impact to the fund balance that we have. Going off of what you see here, your operational, 3-month operational coverage, we would need to keep 24.9, and your unassigned fund balance is 6.7. So again, I wanted to bring forth some ideas, if you will. I didn't want to just bring forth the problem. I wanted to bring forth some ideas to discuss, some things that we've been looking at internally, some opportunities, right? So first and foremost, this ties back to our TASB study and some of the work we've been doing with our HR department at looking at attritioning and not filling FTEs as those FTEs were to leave our district. We can see an approximate savings of $3.2 million there. Another option is looking at reducing travel, approximately saving $256,000 for the district. Currently, our district covers our insurance, the first tier of insurance for all of our employees. One idea that we had was to reduce and then cap that insurance coverage at $350,000. Anything over would then be on the employee to cover. And you can see there that's a little over $500,000 in savings. Another option, another thing that was discussed is ending longevity pay. Again, it could result into $337,000 in savings. Another idea was reducing the work calendar for non-instructional employees by 3 days. And you can see that that opportunity gives us $547,000 in savings. And then again, freeze hiring for non-instructional positions, roughly $285,000 available there. So you can see that those options do add up to over $5.2 million, which would potentially bring down that deficit of 15 down to 10.3.
Can I ask questions now, or do you want us to wait till the end?
I think this is pretty a perfect opportunity, because now after this is just kind of reminding of timelines and where we're going from here. So yeah, we can open up the floor.
Okay. Reducing the cap and insurance to, reducing cap insurance at $350. That sounds like a major change in our benefits that we offer, and I'd like to know how our surrounding districts, who are our competition for teachers, handle that. And if we would then be even further below surrounding districts when we hear that we pay less than them and now we don't offer insurance as well, or we cap insurance. So do we have an idea of how that is handled by our surrounding districts?
And you could say how much it's gone up to, how much the insurance has gone up to.
So currently, the district does pay $364, and that of our premium. So our lowest cost premium is $364 that the district contributes every month. And so that does equal a 0 premium for employee only. And if the recommendation is to reduce just to $350, then that would be $14 that the lowest plan, the employee only, would have to pay.
I understand. My question is about surrounding districts, and if we're gonna set ourselves up to be less competitive in this market to hire.
So TRS is predominantly the insurance carrier for most of the school districts around us. There's a few that are self-funded, but it's typically about $360 to $400 for a premium. And it varies. I'd have to look up all the data. We've been very competitive with the TRS plan, but I can't speak to the ones that are self-funded. But they typically do have a 0 cost to the employee premium on TRS for the lowest plan.
Can we double check that? Because I know when we first passed that health insurance premium, we were one of the few districts that were funding it fully. There are like a lot of districts.
Yeah, real quickly, sorry, 364 was for 22-23 school year. For this school year, 23-24, we did increase that to $395 contribution. So we did go up, which did allow some savings for some employees. As Stephanie indicated, we're roughly around close to what other districts are doing on that contribution.
But I'm sure that other districts are also like us looking. I mean, we just heard this weekend about all the cuts that Austin is making, right? And that they're talking about school closures, and so we're clearly in a similar boat as schools across the state. But I think, to Dr. Salmi's point, if we could look up and see, probably nobody's made the determination yet about what they're doing with benefits, but if we can look and see and get some numbers back, at least on what they did last year, so that we can know where we're at.
Yeah, and it sounds like we would now be saying that we would be,
Reducing further.
so 300, so it's $45 a month then, that would be an additional cost to teachers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Based on the, 0 plan, we went up to $395, so it's full coverage, which is the majority of our staff. It pays dollars for it.
And now they'd be paying $45 a month. Okay.
And we don't know for sure. June is when TRS does release their rates for the new upcoming year. So that's why in June, we do bring you the updated rates for your approval. So right now, we're just projecting and saying $350 is what the district would cover, but we don't know the total cost yet until June.
So it could be higher than $395.
Correct.
Can we also get a number of employees that are using that plan, please?
So, sorry,
Go ahead.
okay. The reducing the work calendar by 3 days for non-instructional staff, who would that affect?
It'd be everybody who's not in the classroom, right? So staff that you see here, administrators, things like that.
And janitorial and hourly?
Correct,
So everyone except teachers
correct.
versus, all the, okay.
Well, would it also affect the instructional assistants who are involved in classroom?
I think they're,
Typically, our 10 months shouldn't, not our.
We base it off of anybody on a 187 calendar. So we do have some that are on a 187, so whoever's on. We'd have to go back, but for this, figure, we used everybody that's on 187, which is usually teachers. So we'd go back and look at those.
Then the same question for freeze on hiring non-instructional positions. That would include administrative staff and hourly personnel?
Correct. Again, anybody who's not in the classroom or not providing instruction
Okay.
directly.
We said earlier that we would not do fills of FTEs for attrition and things like that. So the plan that was presented by the TASB group, does that then include, right, this hiring freeze becomes a little bit of an issue if you have a resignation of someone. Does that mean you wouldn't be backfilling those positions that if someone were to resign?
So it's 2 different line items. So the TASB study, the attrition piece for instructional folks, is that first line item of 3.2. So for anybody who's not in the classroom, that would be that freeze hiring non-instructional position. So anything that would be listed currently, or any positions that were to become open, if you will, that's where we would look to not
So
hire
one of the
those
issues that
positions.
I found with the TASB study was that it did not address the administration and leadership parts of things in a way that was clear to me. It seemed to address a lot of our in-school staffing, but not our in-central office staffing. And I was sort of looking for that to be included in that TASB study. And so what we're saying then is that we would do the TASB study on the classroom and school facility staff, and then we would have a hiring freeze on non-instructional positions. I did not feel like that study gave me a clear understanding of our non-instructional, non-hourly positions and where they are as far as what we have as a district and what those roles and responsibilities are. Is there some way for us to sort of understand that and understand what that would entail if we say we're going to give a hiring freeze on these positions as opposed to changing that structure? I guess that's where I have some confusion still based on that TASB study, because I was hoping that it would address the sort of overarching administration roles in a way that I may have misunderstood or just not understood, but I didn't have a clear understanding of that. Is that something that administration could provide? Is that something that we need to request from a different body?
I wonder if, I know something that I think would be probably helpful for us, given the number of positions that we have coming open and the changes that we've seen this year, is to get an updated org chart for our central office and admin so that we can see sort of, because people's positions have changed, because some of the reports have changed, to see where everybody is. I know the Holdsworth study work changed a lot of that, so if we could get that updated and see where, we know where some of the open positions are, but we also know that there is going to be several other open positions coming online soon. I'm thinking specifically like of the Goodnight middle school principalship, which we're obviously going to have to fill that position, right? But just seeing like where that looks like, I think might be.
Well, and you mentioned the Holdsworth
helpful.
study, and I don't remember seeing us, like, did we get
There's no Holdsworth
closeout
study.
Holdsworth program that you guys worked on, and I don't remember seeing any sort of clear understanding of what came out of that. Perhaps it's lost in my memory, which is definitely possible.
Well, the Holdsworth program was just for administration. It was a process for us to look at how we develop our leaders. It wasn't for the board. It was really for us. We were just informing you all of our progress.
Okay.
You know, but there wasn't a study.
Okay.
Like, part of the
There was a booklet that came out that you could
Yeah,
just.
part of it was for us internally to look at like attrition as people exit, and as people are in the system, like, do we have people ready to go to be an assistant principal? Do we have people ready to go to be a counselor? Do we? So it was mainly for us to kind of set that, but it didn't really align to the TASB study.
Okay.
But the TASB study, I think, does, somewhere in there, it does show our non-instructional administration compared to the like districts.
Okay.
And where we're at, because, like, for example, we debated with them because they showed Andrew with 3 people in communication, they showed Eanes ISD with 0, and we were like, they don't have 0, they have like a whole team. They wound up having like 10. So we were like, how are they showing us as 3 and them? It's the way people hide positions, I guess, so to speak. But we do have that. I think the last time we talked, we had an AP from Goodnight who left to go work at NASA that was part of this non-instructional that we were not going to fill because that was part of the Miller. Remember when the board approved Miller to have an extra? So then we felt like this was a good time to pull that position back and not fill it. So then if Miller loses an AP, then they'll be equalized. But for campuses, those are really the only 2 positions. And then the high school, we lost an AP that we're repurposing to a school safety position, kind of just how big, because we want the APs to be in the building. And it's such a big footprint to take care of. And so we had talked about repurposing that to a lower grade to have somebody that can work with the instructionals, the hall monitors and stuff, and the police officers and things. Those are the 2 that I'm thinking of, the 3 positions that I'm thinking of. campus-based. But yeah, we can get you the org chart,
Yeah.
the redone org chart, so y'all can see.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that would be valuable.
yep. We had that put away somewhere.
And
Yeah,
then-
so we updated it, and, yeah.
Okay. And reducing travel, let's travel by whom?
Say that again.
Kind of the whole system,
Okay.
not affecting kids.
But teachers getting training.
Out-of-state travel and things like that, yeah.
Could I ask,
But like if it's student events, we'd still send students with the teachers to.
Okay.
what is an approximate number of our district travel budget?
Our approximate, that figure right there, that 256.
No,
That's the
I-
overall
I-
budget every year, roughly?
What's in the current proposed budget?
Yeah, what is the
But
normal?
this is the
what was it-
reduced
How
amount.
much did y'all spend on travel last year?
I would say it's approximately around that. We have hit 300,000, but usually it's around anywhere from 200,000 to 300,000.
This is for the whole district,
Right.
so that's really reducing it. Alrighty then,
And
no more testing. Well, we'll miss you.
Other questions?
the into longevity pay, I had requested that we add additional personnel to the longevity pay so that we could potentially recruit back people who have left our district. Is that something that did I miss that? So this is the longevity pay that we assigned, that we approved last year. And the proposal then would be that we're now going to take it back and not have that as part of.
So
I
this
don't
is just,
understand that.
this is just admin's first thought.
Understood. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to understand what you're proposing.
First numbers.
I think on the longevity, we kind of talked about if we're able to give teachers an increase, like a 5%, that's gonna really cover the longevity, so it'd be over what longevity would have had anyways.
Uh-huh. But all of these numbers are based on a no change for teachers.
But you're distinguishing a longevity pay as a one-time amount, as opposed to if you put it on their salary, then it's continuing.
Was the longevity pay that we did last year a one-time amount, or was it?
It's separate.
It's continuing.
It's gonna be continuing this year at a increase, a percent increase. I believe it's 25%, is that correct?
Yeah, but it's a one-time payment to them, correct?
They get a payment every month.
So it's part of their salary, so that when they retire, it goes into their retirement estimates?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, it is part of their salary.
I mean, what I'm seeing is that this is basically a presentation that you're trying to show us what it'll look like if we do what we have to do to come in as close to a balanced budget as possible, which is obviously impossible for us to do virtually without significant
It would be very
closures,
difficult, correct.
reductions, et cetera,
Correct.
which nobody wants.
$10 million deficit.
Right.
And these are options, like I was saying. These are opportunities that we were looking at where potential cost savings can come about. We're open again for other ideas. We're going to continue looking at other ideas as well. But I didn't want to come this evening with just numbers and no ideas or opportunities to present to the board.
I appreciate that. I think we are all gonna have to reckon with the fact that the state did not allocate more money. And that's a bitter pill to swallow, but it's the truth and it's the reality of what we have to deal with, and we don't know when or if they are going to increase that allocation. And so it's very difficult for us to do anything else not having that at hand, right? And so I
Correct.
think that this is responsible, identifying places where we can make reductions. I think it's painful, and it's not something that I'm very excited at all about. I don't think probably anybody is, but I think this is responsible. I'm not sure that I'm on board for all of these. I appreciate having the options. Personally, I would like to see us try to maintain our insurance payments. I think that's something that we have taken on for our employees, and I think it's important that we continue that. I think it's part of establishing good culture. I think it's part of being good, responsible employers to provide that. I think also if we take this, if we reduce it, that's actually a pay cut for our employees who receive that insurance benefit. And I'm not so interested in pay cuts. I understand we might not be able to do pay increases, which is unfortunate, but I think if we can try to prevent pay cuts and prevent reductions, that would be my priority. So I would like to see us try to keep the insurance payments if at all possible. The same with the longevity. You know, I think that's something that we really thought a lot about. And it's something that we know that there's a need to keep teachers, especially now if we're looking at, we're gonna have to make other cuts, trying to keep teachers that we do have who are good and doing a good job. So I'd be in favor of trying to keep that. You know, I think the attrition and the do not fill FTEs, I'm immediately on board with that, right? Some of the other ones I'm more open to discussing, but that's kind of
When
where I'm
did you
seeing things.
say the insurance, you were gonna get the new insurance rate?
June. In
So
June.
is that like right before the June meeting?
We hope.
Probably, sometimes it's
Okay.
after, and it's not anything we
So,
can control.
I guess then, when we get ready to adopt, then we just go through and we vote on which one of these we like, or if there's other options that come up.
I mean, I think the process is open to us. We've done it different ways in the
I'm
past.
asking, yeah, that's what I'm
So the
asking.
board can determine, I mean, we could give direction right now to staff. We're not really agendized to take a vote on this. We're open to having a discussion on it.
Workshop.
But so we can all express where we're at and ask staff that we'd like to see this, we're not interested in seeing that. And then we could bring back multiple budget options. You know, I'm not sure, I mean, we've never done it before where we've gone, everybody in favor of this part, everybody in favor of that part. We haven't done it before like that. We could. But we've done it more along the lines of we have a variety of packages presented from administration that are evidence of the conversations that we've had in the past with the board. And so then the admin tries to put together those packages that reflect those conversations, and then we make motions on that. But we could do it a different way.
And we've done that in the past. I know last year we brought forth a couple
Yeah.
options of this is the budget, this is the things that are in that budget, and we had, I believe 3 scenarios. and
Yeah.
I believe
Yeah, I
that-
just, this is more line item, so, and I know we're all gonna have differing opinions, so I wanna make sure that everybody has a say and represent when it comes time to vote versus I say, well, I wanna keep longevity pay, take that off, and then it disappears, which isn't,
Right. Yeah.
isn't a good way and is not a very public way of doing it, so.
Sure. I
think-
mean, we can do it. I mean, I think if we wanted to, we could certainly do that in terms of, we could say, we could vote first on if we're going to do the no change, right? We could just go straight down and we could say, you know, are we going to adopt the no change, or are we going to adopt an increase? And then we could go through each item specifically.
I think for public discourse, I think that would be a great idea.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
I do think we also need to put in, because Trustee Solomon brought up a point. Like, I don't think the community really understands, like, the state funds GT at 5%, right? Or what used to be 5%, but we fund it significantly higher. Special education, we get X amount of dollars, yet this board in the history has chosen to support kids, which requires more staff, and I don't think people really, like, people need to see those numbers as y'all are going through this discussion, right? I don't know how we did that before, where we had it in the system where the state gives us, but this is what we're actually funding.
Yeah, that's your tier 1 allotment, so I can definitely provide that information at the May budget workshop, and work through those tier 1 allotments, what we receive, what we actually spend, things of that nature.
If you put it in a budget workshop, does it become part of the board book? Because I think the way to get that information more transparent is to put it in the board book, if I'm not mistaken.
I can provide that.
Yeah, and I don't think that we necessarily need a presentation on it, but putting it in a board book makes it available to everyone so that everyone can see it. I would also ask, going forward, the other thing that I think is confusing to board members, because I am one, and to the public, is understanding what the budget deficit actually means, and understanding what our budget deficit that we adopted last year was, and what we actually ended up with. as a deficit, because those numbers are not as clear-cut as they appear to be here. And while I am absolutely in favor of us operating without a deficit, we are operating currently with $30,000 in a fund balance. And so we have additional funds available right now, and that's something that I want to make just really clear so that everyone understands it, right? That these numbers are not the same because of the way that the school finance works. This isn't like closing out your books for the year means it's done. And so the more information that we can provide on that, like if you have this table for the previous page, can we have what those projections were last year and this year side by side so that we can see them and make comparisons that are apples to apples?
I can provide that information. I guess the issue with that is everything is such a moving part, right?
Absolutely.
Based on ADA numbers, based on what legislation was
Right.
going to provide, districts, things like that. I can definitely provide that information.
Yeah.
But I would say it's hard to make that apples and apples comparison because
Understood
it's not.
completely. Understood completely. But as a standalone table, this is also not entirely informative because we have had bigger budgets that we didn't end up spending in the past. We have had bigger deficits that we didn't actually meet in the past. And so that's where I think that it's valuable to have more than one column of data when you're presenting this table so that people can make comparisons, because these are somewhat comparative things. We did adopt a budget last year that had a deficit, and we spent on that budget. What did we spend? Did we actually not? And we adopted a unassigned fund balance in fiscal year 24. Where was that compared to where we actually ended up? And those kinds of things I think are helpful in transparency and in understanding as a board member, because this is a different kind of budget than I'm used to seeing in my workplace, and I imagine it is for everyone else.
Yeah, because if you're, I agree with Mary. If you're looking at 15 mil deficit and the fund balance at the end of, let's say, I don't remember what our deficit was last year, but I think it was somewhere upwards of 15 mil, wasn't it?
26 million.
26. So how much of that unassigned fund balance went down because of our deficit, you know? And I know it's been higher than the current projected 6.7 million.
Mm-hmm.
So is that how we're covering our deficit, is using the unassigned fund balance, and what is that looking at?
Mm-hmm.
You know, as it's getting lower and lower and lower,
Mm-hmm.
you know, having those snapshots just help us kind of put things in perspective,
We can definitely provide that information.
especially when y'all can all point at us for the budget when it, and rightfully so, right?
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of understanding, because you guys understand this a lot more than we do. Because this is a very complicated budget to develop, and
I would
find,
borderline say it's a ludicrous way of doing it.
certainly, and out of our control, right? This is assigned
Yes.
to us from the state of Texas. It is out of our control, but we are doing our best to understand it. So,
And I think maybe it would be helpful to, in maybe July when we don't have a meeting, for us to do one of our videos from the board that is a quick breakdown of why it's so confusing.
Absolutely.
And to the best of our ability, you know, so people know what we're doing
okay,
with
Mr.
their
Doyle has
tax
to write
dollars.
has to write that one. That script.
I actually provided a
Garcia.
presentation
That's
a while back for the city of San Marcos, and my opening slide was just a ball of yarn. That's what I led with.
That's
But,
what it is.
but no, we can provide that information. I'd be happy to work with the board or whoever in July to provide information on how Texas school funding works in public ed. And,
Yeah, and if we can get it in the board book or earlier than that, then we can read through it, and that way if we have questions at the next, you know, then we're prepared to ask questions so we don't waste time.
So with that being said, that was a good springboard into future meetings. Not to rush or anything, but I did want to point out, again, we have to have that adopted budget by that June 17th meeting. A few things that go into that. We do also have to provide public notice of those budget meetings and those conversations. So again, there's some lag time that we got to work through and work around. So it sounds like we have a menu of information to provide you in May at that May 6th meeting. We also have opportunities at the May 20th meeting. Hopefully by that June 3rd meeting, we have a pretty good understanding of where that budget is. It takes a long time to get a lot of these pieces added into our systems to be able to be ready for that June 17th meeting. So we'll continue to provide information to the board, and we're open to suggestions and feedback and guidance, and we'll be ready by June 17th.
So are you proposing here for April, May that we're gonna vote on, for the May meeting, that we're gonna vote on potential salary increases and the rest of the items that were up there?
It would certainly help, so that way we can provide that budget for adoption in June 17th.
Okay, so if we are gonna be prepared to take that vote at the regular May meeting, then I think we, in the May agenda prep meeting, need to all come prepared to decide what the process is gonna be. If we're gonna do a sort of slate adoption like we've done in the past, or if we're gonna take Mr. Shank's suggestion this time and do a line item adoption, just so that we can have that conversation at that time, so staff will know how we're gonna proceed, so it'll be all ready to go for the May meeting.
President Halsey?
Yeah.
Is it possible for us to decide on that now?
Sure.
I mean, I don't know that we need to, if we need to take action, I don't know that we're agendized to take action, but if we
Not
can have that
agendized.
conversation right now,
Can't take action.
Yeah,
we can have the
certainly
conversation and take
conversation,
action at
yeah.
the April meeting. And
Yeah.
so I agree with Mr. Shanks that it would probably be in everyone's best interest for us to have a more broken down budget to decide on, as opposed to the full slate that we've had in the past. But I won't be voting on it, so I really shouldn't be the person making that decision. But that's what I think.
Other ideas, thoughts on the process?
I mean, I think if we're looking at 6 things, I think it's fair to say we can just vote individually on these 6 things. If we're gonna talk about 60 things, that's a different question, but I think it's pretty fair, for transparency's sake and everything, that we look at each one of these items individually.
And so the things then, please jump in, Mr. Shanks, if you're thinking something different than the way I'm saying it, but the way I'm seeing it then would be that we would first take a vote on whether we're going to adopt a no increase budget. Alternately, we would have scenarios that we could vote on that would, so I would say we take see, this is where it gets complicated, when I want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that makes sense, right? Like, do I propose that we are going to take a no, or are we going to wait for a motion on that? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I just want to understand how we're going to do this.
Since in the past, we've had
Right.
option 1, 2, 3, then you can create a 1 that's no changes, and then 2 and 3, you could bunch them up in 3 and 3.
So what we're seeing now is a 0 change, no salary changes.
Right. But we'd have to, we have to officially adopt that.
Yeah,
And I
so-
could see that somebody might want to say, no, I want to propose a 1% increase, right? I mean, we need to leave that option unless,
That can always be
until we
added when you have a
take
motion.
action that we're not doing that, that needs to still be available, right? Like,
This isn't so many that there's a problem in
I'm
having
trying,
different-
No, I know it's not you.
let me-
The whole, so I guess, just to make sure I'm understanding in my brain. So this is the 0 sum, no pay raise. And these are additional measures that could be taken
To save
in
money.
order to save even more.
Correct.
So if we decide that we want to do a 1.5 pay raise for classroom positions, then this could also be some of the place where we get some of the cost, to help pay
Offset.
for
Right.
that one. So these can kind of be in each package, I think. That would kind of simplify it.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to make sure that I'm trying to
Yeah, no, and I
address
was,
your
I was.
concerns, right? And
yes.
I also want to make sure that we are doing it in a way that is feasible and that we can give staff direction on how to present it to us so that we
Right.
can take a vote that will not take us 70 rounds of voting also. And that we look like we sort of know what we're doing. So,
Okay.
So it's,
Y'all are demonstrating the complexity with the budget
I
process.
understand.
absolutely,
It's-
absolutely.
This
we-
is why it's a complicated.
Can we add this piece to our agenda for 2 weeks from now? And then in May, we can get the option with 0 increase and 1% and 2%, whatever we want to look at then. That will include whatever we've already decided on from here.
yeah,
Is there any problem with that? I mean, it will be different board members, one different board member in May, but the parts here
Right.
could be decided on next week. This table could be voted on individually next week and then, or
Right.
in
we
April.
we can certainly do that, and then we could
there's
vote
some,
on.
like, guidance regarding that is done. And then I guess what I would say, sorry, I didn't mean to
Go ahead.
cut you off, would be if there were a way for us, for the board who's present here, to propose the numbers that they would like to see. That's what we've done in the past, right? Is that we have this 0 plan and you've provided what, what those costs would be if we have the no change. Now, we decided to keep these, maintenance and operation, these costs have, if we take this route, and these changes have been part of the budget going forward, you would be able to say, the no change, the 0 plan gives you these numbers, a 1% increase, whatever, gives you these numbers, a 2%, a 3%, and then it would be a little smaller chunk that needed to be decided going forward.
So I can,
I'm amenable to that if everybody else is.
I can provide this presentation at the April board meeting with this information. Working the percentages in the salary plan, do we have enough time to turn that
I didn't
around?
mean
No,
for
that would be
that
the
to
next
be in
meeting.
April, I meant for that to be
May.
on your other schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be on your regular schedule. We're just giving,
Okay.
we're proposing that we possibly vote on
Yeah.
that
Six
chart
items.
next
Okay.
meeting, so that y'all going into doing all the salary, the projections for salary and stuff, you have this information that's
Sure.
already been approved, and you can just plug that into your
Sure.
numbers and.
That information would definitely be helpful, especially in this time frame, because
Yeah.
what we were just discussing, by the June board book publication, we have to have everything solidified, so, the quicker we can get to the answers, the better
So in
we
a
are.
complicated way, we're trying to simplify.
You are. No, this is great. No, it's
Okay,
great.
so then
Miss Hartley?
we'll take, yes.
When you look at the list of 6, the attrition and not fill FTEs and freeze hiring and reduce travel, those 3 could kind of be grouped together because we had already talked before in a workshop that we were going to save money by attrition. So the freeze and the attrition could be put together even with the reduced travel. And then the other 3 would be individual votes, because the insurance, longevity pay, and reducing calendar days, those impact quite a few people. So
Right.
when you start looking at all 6, if you move up the freeze up here with the attrition, that's almost, what, 3.5?
3.5.
3.5 million, which is a good sizable savings. And then that leaves us to decide on insurance cap, longevity pay, and reduced work calendar. Because before in our other budget workshops, we've agreed that the best way to save money is through attrition. This way you're not cutting anybody's
Right.
salary. When you start reducing calendar days, that's reducing salary. The longevity, to me, is a plus that keeps our people happy, and the insurance, the full funding of the insurance, those are 3 things that the individuals will feel it. But when you use attrition and you freeze your hiring non-instructional positions, that isn't hurting, that's maintaining. And so that's the way I'm looking at this, and I'm not saying I'm an expert at budgets, but those are easier to put out there.
Right, and I think to that point, the attrition piece, right, that's something that we're currently in the process, as we've looked at staff reviews and things of that nature, we're looking at those opportunities.
I mean, I think that, I agree with you, actually, entirely. But I think that is part of the conversation that we should have when we take the vote on it. I think that we should take this, so I think that in 2 weeks, we should not vote on whether or not we are doing a no increase budget. I think we should just vote on those 6 things.
Discussion and possible action regarding cost-saving opportunities.
Opportunities,
Yes.
right, and
That.
then if you wanted to
That's it.
propose at the time,
I got
that
it.
you would like to propose that we keep these 3 things, group them together and approve that, then we do it that way. And that would seem to me to meet the objectives of being as transparent as possible with all of the various things and still accomplishing that, but then somebody else could propose it differently too, right, and we can have that conversation and action then, that's,
That would be a motion I could live with.
so that's sort of where I'm seeing it go. Does that make sense, everybody? And then, then at the May meeting, in the budget meeting, we'll talk about the potential scenarios for increases or no increases, and then we'll vote on that in May. And then the idea would be in June, when we get to that point, we would just have the budget. And then, now, there's a caveat that I have to say, that none of this is final until the end of June, and it's all been passed, right? So at any point, there is the potential that it could come back on the board. I just want to make everybody aware of that it's still procedurally open, but this would be the working idea that we would have. Yes?
Yes, I'm good.
I have one
Yes.
specific question, concern on the attrition part. I had a concern with the idea that we don't need school nurses on each of our campuses. Would that be included in this attrition, or are we ignoring that
So we're
recommendation?
not, no, the nurses are not being pulled.
Okay.
It was the attrition of the assistant nurse position that we brought in post-COVID, where we were seeing an excess of illness, right, especially with our nurses, where we needed that fill-in position, if you will. That is the position that's within the attrition, but not your standard school nurse, no.
Right.
Would it be, is it reasonable to request the administrative, sorry, my brain just froze up for a sec.
Non-instructional positions?
Yeah, that you were gonna provide for administrative positions and the overarching format of where those are.
Organizational
what
chart?
Sorry?
Are you talking about the organizational
The
chart?
org chart, there we go, the org chart. Would it be reasonable to ask for the org chart in the board book? Is that something that,
It's currently on our website. We've
Okay.
had a lot of moving parts in the different departments.
Understood.
So we can spend time updating that tomorrow.
Okay.
And I can send you a link,
Yeah.
because it's live on the website.
okay,
There's some spots where it says vacant on a few spots that have been filled.
Okay.
And then there's a few spots where we need to put vacant.
Okay.
But yeah, we can update that and send that to
Okay.
you tomorrow.
okay,
That'd be great.
thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
That was
Mr.
complicated.
Shanks?
Are you ready?
Well,
Okay,
I have
wait,
one more
yes.
question. I'm not sure
Dr.
if it
Salmi,
can
go ahead.
fit in here. I'm sorry, Brian, you know, I'm
Should've just
sorry.
went for it.
She was I know, he was ready.
For you, Mary,
I
I'll
know.
pull it back.
So the plans for the budget changes, is that something where if we go forward and we would want to look at, are we planning then to look at packages? Like a 1% increase for teachers or things like that? And is that something that we want to ask the staff to start getting prepared at this time, so they have time to get it prepared for those meetings
We
later?
already are.
They are.
Okay, so that's already in the works?
Yes, we are
Okay.
already in the works.
Okay,
And any other friend? I mean, I think that needs to be, I mean, we've already covered it at one point. We've had an initial discussion on it. I think that really needs to be the focus of the May budget workshop and what those specifics are. I don't have any specific numbers.
Nothing over 3. Nothing over 3.
I mean, I think 3 is a reasonable max for sure, because in other industries and perhaps what other districts are doing, and I know, I fully understand that we are the timing of this is so important, because it is something that when other districts decide to change things right after we announce ours, then we put ourselves at a disadvantage for hiring. But I would say that once again, keeping teachers in classrooms needs to be the focus of our budget. Right?
Especially because we've seen the cost of turnover.
So just looking from, because I've been on calls with TASB, just already starting to pull the research, looking at market data. If you want to keep longevity, that means that we're not going to be able to consider 3%, because 3% is going to not give us the ability to keep longevity on that step schedule, because we do the whole table, like the step schedule, we increase it. And so Denise and I have looked at 5% for teacher step schedule, being able to keep longevity. So we'll give you all of that data to look at, because we've been back and forth having conversation. What does longevity do to our step schedule, and what does the overall increase equal?
So are you saying that it's either or? Either we go with longevity so that we don't have this huge deficit. We either go with longevity or you go with the steps.
So we looked at rolling in longevity to the step schedules where it's not just for returning staff. It would be for all of those staff to get a pay increase equal to 5%. And we do average teacher pay. And so we would do the average teacher pay, I think it's like 60,000 times 5%, and each step would get that flat amount. So that if the longevity step schedule 5 years plus, it encompasses that, because remember, 25 years is quite a bit for longevity. And so if we don't give at least 5%, then we're not going to be able to keep rolling up longevity. And it makes a lot of sense when we can show you the numbers.
I think that's
at the
valuable,
workshop.
because what I recall from the longevity plan and why we approved that is that where we differ from like districts is in teachers with experience. We have a lot of teachers with a few years of experience and have proven to have a hard time retaining teachers in our district. And so my recollection of that policy was that it was aimed at retaining teachers, which is a deficit we have. We compared to like districts and surrounding districts. And unfortunately, we don't lose staff just to like districts. We mostly probably lose staff to surrounding districts that are very unlike us. But we still have to keep that in mind when we're hiring and we're trying to retain staff. So I think that's where I would say my focus would be. Again, full transparency, I won't be voting on this. So I think, but focusing on teacher retention, because it is so directly correlated with what we are focused on, which is student outcomes and student education.
So you're supporting longevity versus
Not necessarily, I think.
percentage increase?
Not necessarily. I think what I would say I'm supporting is that when we look at where we're focusing our increases, for me, that would need to be teachers and other classroom staff.
And we'll be, in the May workshop, we are working closely with TASB, another side of TASB, it's compensation. So they will be helping us present some options for you to consider based on our market data in order for us to maintain competitive, and then if you'd like to, attract more years of service talent. And so they'll be
Fantastic.
presenting that.
Thank you.
I would like to complicate that further, sorry. I would like, when we have this budget preparation in May, to also get a report, and it can be provided ahead of time in writing, and we can discuss it if we feel like we need to, but I want us to be aware of what other districts are announcing they're doing in terms of cuts and closures. Any information we have at that time, like I know there was a big news story this weekend about Austin, right? What they're doing. So anything else that we can find by this time next month on what districts are doing and the measures that they're taking, so that we
Spring
have,
branch.
right, so that we have an awareness of that as we're making this decision, these decisions. Anything else?
No.
Mr. Shanks?
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion made by Mr. Shanks, seconded by Ms. Cantu. All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Thank you very much. Everybody enjoy the eclipse.
I'll be
Wear your glasses.
Mr. Superintendent?
Providing glasses to all students and staff.
Hey!
Oh, that's fantastic. I want to commend us for canceling class when we did, because I've heard from several coworkers who, their districts did not cancel class until last week, and they were not happy about it. So thank you for telling us at the beginning of the semester, of the year.
That was Andrew. That was Andrew.
Good choice.
Good call. Including someone that works for me, who knows to be able.
One cancellation at a time.